Hey, good day. It's Marty Walser, also known as Raging Owlbear on social media, and today I'm going to be talking about the Warlock Tiles, a dungeon tile system, and specifically the town and village set of the Warlock Tiles. Warlock Tiles is a new dungeon tile system from WizKids to go with your tabletop RPG and other miniatures games that you might require sort of a combat and setup in tiles for. So let me talk really quickly about Warlock Tiles. The Warlock Tiles are a set of floor and dungeon tiles on which you affix walls, doors, other setups to make a little sort of 3D battle grid setup. So I've set up a few with this particular set. I'll quickly show you. Here's a few rooms that I quickly put together with the Warlock tiles. Now I did add a couple accessories in the middle. I'll talk about that in a minute. Tables and the chairs are not included in the base set, but as you can see from that particular set, there is, I made sort of a little merchant area that has like a front room and a back room. I have another small set that is kind of like almost like a little mini stable or something like that. A couple divisions inside, and then I have a little spot in the back which is slightly incomplete, which I'll show you in a minute. So the Warlock tile set, again, comes with floors, walls, doors, and various accoutrements. And so let's talk a little bit about the contents of the box. Now, the Warlock tiles have both this town set and a dungeon set. The difference being the dungeon set has more stone walls, stone doorways and archways and whatnot. So but it does have the same two-sided stone on one side and wood on the other side tiles. But the walls and doors and various stuff is more stone oriented because it's supposed to be in a dungeon setting. The Warlock tile town and city, of course, town and village, of course, has the sort of Tudor style stucco walls and wooden doors and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about the contents of this particular box. It comes with 24 of these floor tiles. These are 2x2. They are stone on one side and they are wood on the other. It comes with 8 of these little straight walls, which are, sort of that, again, that Wattle and Daubs sort of stucco look from the Tudor style. It comes with 4 of the windows in the same style. And these are all what are called half-height walls. There are full-height walls, but they are not included in this set. They have an expansion set that's going to have full-height walls. And a lot of other build systems out there have full-height walls, which I'll get to in a moment. There are also 4 exterior doors. There are 5 of what are called the sort of inside corner sets, which means you have the tile attaches on the inside to make a corner like this. And then there are 5 of the outside corner sets, which means you're building around the outside corner and the tile attaches on the outside corners like that. As I noted, 4 of the exterior doors. There are also 4 of these double door sets. And the doors, note the doors are fully openable. There are a few doors, which I'll show you, which don't necessarily open, but I'll show you why in a moment. Then they have these special, what are called these interior walls and interior doors. And what these are is, instead of a full-size wall that's the thickness of like ½ inch or thereabouts, they have these very thin walls that you can slot in between tiles, and I'll show you that in a moment. And they also have these doors. Now, these are the thin doors, do not open, but they're just meant to create a division in the rooms to show where the doors and walls would be interior, so you don't necessarily have to include these thick walls into your interior layout. It makes it a little bit easier. It gives you a little bit more of a flexible build. So the set comes with 15 of these interior walls, and it comes with 5 of these interior doors. There are also spaces where you might be creating a wall and you need an end cap or you need something like that. So there's a little slot for these square pillars, and there are 8 of these corner pillars that you can set like that, so you could have a spot where sort of 2 walls come together where you're not using a explicit corner piece, but you can create what looks like essentially a corner spot using 2 straight walls and the little pillar piece. And of course the pillar piece is also nice if you just have a wall that sort of ends out into space if you're doing a certain type of layout. And then last but not least, oh, I dropped it on the floor here, sorry. Let me grab a replacement. There are these little, what are called these little sort of tile end caps, which is, if you're doing just laying out some tiles, you're not necessarily putting up all the walls, like you're just putting out a floor for your people to put their characters on. You can, instead of having these sort of kind of ugly open slots, you can add a little wooden piece to make that look like a nice flush spot. This is also nice if you're creating a raised platform. Now, if you're not familiar with this kind of tile system, you're like, well, why does it have all these little holes on the side? And that's a really good question. And the reason is that these tiles slot together using a special little clip that kind of looks like an alligator mouth. And you slide the clip into one side like that, and then you can take your wall, and depending upon whether you want a floor or wood floor or stone floor, and then you just use a little bit of force to press it in, and there you have, voila, you've got the tile set. And so you can see that in the build I've created several floor sections and built some walls into those floor sections in the layout. So that's the clip system, and this is not really a new idea. You see, WizKids has kept an eye on what's going on in the 3D printing world, because in the 3D printing world there are many people who are taking what they've seen in sets like Dwarven Forge, which Dwarven Forge has these big chunky plastic dungeon walls and various stuff. But the 3D printing world has, the older Dwarven Forge, and now the newer Dwarven Forge has magnets so it can click together. But the older Dwarven Forge doesn't have a system to hold rooms together. Now, the newer Dwarven Forge does use magnets, but it then still requires you to get like a base plate that you can kind of sit them on to magnetize the plate. Not all the pieces have magnets on the edges, so you can't necessarily magnetize everything. So in the 3D printing world, they created these clips. There's 2 types of clips out there. The older one is called the OpenLock clip, and that's these little. I have a few 3D printed OpenLock clips. So it's a little clip that looks, it's obviously the WizKids clip is reminiscent of the clip systems that were already out there. And then there's another one called a DragonLock clip, and those clips kind of look like this one. And knowing that these other systems were out there, WizKids saw what the 3D printing world was doing and said, hey, we can create sets so people don't necessarily have to buy a 3D printer or print their own, do the painting, stuff like that. We can buy some prefab set. We can create some prefab sets with our own clip system, and that's exactly what they did. So they developed this new clip for you to clip together your pieces. Now, so again, you're getting in this set, you're getting windows and doors and walls, and as you can see, these sets retail for about $99.99, so just shy of $100 full MSRP. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to cost you $100. As an example, online, this particular village set costs about $70 at the moment. The dungeon tile set is in the $85 to $90 range, but prices are going to sort of waver up and down as supply and demand, and especially the Christmas, after Christmas the demand might drop, so you might see prices move up and down. But for about $70, you get enough to build, 3 fairly significant layouts, or you could build like obviously a much larger single layout with lots of interior spaces if you would like. Um, with that in mind, this review was not so much just talking about the Warlock tiles, but also what the competition has out there and how even if you have your foot in to the systems that their competitors are, such as Dwarven Forge, and such as 3D printed OpenLock or other systems, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be exclusive to one system or another. And especially with the Warlock tiles, they knew that other people, especially in the 3D printing, enthusiasts, were already using DragonLock and were already using OpenLock. So they included, along with their own clips for their own system, they included several clips that are half of their clip and half of the clip from the other company. So as an example, this is an OpenLock clip on one side, and it's the Warlock tile clip on the other side. Similarly, this is an a Warlock clip on the one side and the DragonLock clip on the other side. Because they knew people might have already printed some stuff and then they might want to interchangeably use those with the Warlock tiles. Now they included 8 clips of each of these 2 different clip types. 8 of the OpenLocks, half OpenLock, half Warlock tile ones, and 8 of the DragonLock and Warlock tile clips. Now, if you have a lot of stuff printed out from either of these, you're hoping that maybe they'll put out, well, I know I'm personally hoping that maybe they'll put out some sort of clip that people can 3D print to get more of these, because 8 is a nice number, but for those of us who have a lot of stuff printed in other systems, it would be nice to have, several more, maybe about double that. It'd be cool to have about 16 of these clips. And that would probably do me sufficient, but it would be nice if they perhaps put out a 3D file that those of us who are in the 3D printing enthusiasts, could print out our own half clips. I know there's obviously some legal ramifications to that because, people always trademark their clip design. And so, just like OpenLock, they have released their design on Creative Commons so people can create some of their own and print their own clips and do their own stuff with it, within the limits of the license. Now, that would require WizKids to create a license that will allow people to 3D print their specific design. Hopefully we might see something like that. It's hard to know. So let me talk a little bit about the way the tiles go together. Of course, I showed you that the tiles, clip together, and it takes a little bit of force. As a matter of fact, one of the complaints with these clips is that you really have to sometimes apply a fair amount of force. And one of the things, especially when you're trying to build a larger build and you're sort of jimmying lots of pieces together, because of the flexibility, because of the way that the clips sort of flex as you're trying to get everything together, you can sometimes cause some issues. And it's rare, but as an example, I was pressing 2 pieces together and I had this occur. So my tile actually split apart. Now, this isn't a big deal. It didn't actually break. It split along the join line. So if you see, they have a join on this side and they have a join on that side. They clip together like that, and then they're glued at the factory or whatnot. So when the force of the clips, when I was really trying to get 2 pieces together and I was having a little bit of trouble, it popped to the glue, obviously. And so this is not a huge deal. I can glue this thing right back together. And actually I can kind of just squeeze it together and it still kind of does the job it needs to do, because I can still, get that clip in there and it holds it pretty tight, even with the tile loose, as it were. So as a matter of fact, so there. So it actually still holds pretty tight. So despite this tile having been split, I haven't even glued it. It will hold, it sort of holds together just on friction, which is pretty nice. But, again, you have to be, when you're putting your pieces together, you have to be a little careful about how you're applying the force, because sometimes it might slip and you pop, and sure enough, it'll pop right off. So let me show you a little bit up close of the builds that I did, and show you one of the things that I think is a little bit standout about this clip system is actually these thin walls. And these thin walls actually make these particular Warlock tile systems, and that the dungeon set also has some thin walls as well in the dungeon style and stone style. But what makes these systems very attractive, even to people who are 3D printing their own stuff, is that the 3D printing world doesn't really have a great solution for something like this that's really thin. When you're trying to insert doors and walls, you basically have to use a full thickness. You have to print out a full thickness wall and then arrange your layout, create the space in your layout to fit all that stuff in. The nice thing about this is you can have two tiles, right next to each other, and this thing just slots right in, and I'll show you in a minute. Let me transition to the other camera again. So here you can see some of the layouts that I built. I built a very simple, 4 square, 4-inch by 4-inch layout here. And so, just put up some walls, a couple of double doors, make it look like maybe a little barn or something like that. And then here I have this little divider tile now. So I have a 4x4 grid. And here, let me show you. This is some of the flexing that I'm talking about. When you have the clips in, because you can't clip every single part of it together, there's still a little bit of a give and take, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to show you. But, the side effect of that is that these little walls just slot really easily, just right in there. And so now you can create a slightly different layout just by slotting some of these little walls in. Now, if we switch to my larger build, again, here you'll see I made like a little, let me take these are not included. These are my own 3D printed accessories, little table and chairs. But I can take this particular system, and I built slotted in a couple walls and doors. Switch back. So, I made like the little back room area where I slotted in doors and walls, so you could make like a little, space for, you're storing your stuff. Maybe this is a tavern. Here you got your barrels, and this is a little office or whatever, something like that. And of course, I can just pop those doors and walls right out, pull it out. Now I have a much more wide open space. And maybe I just want to reconfigure that real easy. I grab a couple more those walls, slot them in between, and and I can just alter the layout interior wise, and it's real easy because these things just pop right in and out. And this is this is probably the nicest feature of using a tile system like this one. So put that back out there for a second. So these little thin doors and walls are actually very attractive, even to somebody who's 3D printing, because the nice thing about this is not only does this fit on your little Warlock tiles, it is perfectly usable with your existing 3D printed tiles. And let me grab as an example. I have the floor that I have here that I put the OpenLock tile in, and this is a little 3D printed floor that I just have. It's something I took from Thingiverse and redesigned a little bit. So this is one of my own little pieces that I've built. And I can slot that right in there. Oops, let me flip it around. So, I can create, add an additional tile next to mine, and you know, there's a tiny, teeny, maybe a 1 millimeter height difference sometimes with some of these tiles. Depends on which tiles you printed out, but most of them fit pretty well. Actually, this one, pull that off here. This one actually depends on which way you set the tile lock as well. Like, so let me switch it around here. Because of the OpenLock tile and the Warlock tile clips have a slightly different thickness. So you have to they did a little offset so that you could try to match the top and bottom of your OpenLock tile with your Warlock tile. So they thought of a lot of, you know, they made sure that they, you know, were trying to meet the expectations of their people. So here I have, actually, you know what? Let's slide it in right here. So here I have my, you know, my OpenLock tile slotted in the regular tile, and you know, if I want to put a little wall between them, actually they fit really tightly, and there you go. So I can use, you know, these Warlock tile inserts, or throw in the door. Let's grab the door, toss that on there. You know, these little inserts that come with the Warlock tiles fit really nicely with a 3D printed selection. The other nice thing about this too is, let's say that I've printed out some something a little fancier. You know, I like here's a tile that I've just kind of primed. It's a Tudor style tile that's kind of like the Tudor walls. Now it's only in a gray because I haven't finished painting it up. But here I have the OpenLock clip. Just slap that on the floor, and there you go. I have a really nicely matched, you know, if I wanted a slightly fancier window and a full height, I can create a full height wall if I want. That's nice, especially if you have a multi-level stacking. You notice the one thing about the Warlock tiles is that it doesn't really stack multi-level with the half-height walls. And I know they use the half-height walls in particular because the half-height walls are nice for reaching in for miniatures. You know, it gives you that nice line of sight across the table. There isn't that sort of blocking, you know, when you're sitting around the table. Because the high walls don't really block what you can see of the miniature layout. And it's a preference, it's a play preference. Some people like the taller walls to get a really fuller 3D feel. And again, you can stack, you know, you can create a multi-level building if you've 3D printed a lot of walls. And you know, here they even have these little wall notches on the top for stacking the other stuff on top so it doesn't slide around and move off. But here, you know, again, it's a really nice, you know, I can go ahead and put my own 3D printed wall on here. And similarly, I have some, you know, sort of half-height Tudor walls that I've printed out as well for similar reasons. And so I can, you know, slot the tile clip here real quick. Again, takes a little bit of pressure. Slot the tile clip, throw on my half-height wall, and there you go. So, you know, I've got my OpenLock walls and my Warlock tile bottom. This is one of the reasons that I would like a little more clips, because just having this capability, you know, gives me a little bit more flexibility of things that I could print, different wall styles, different things like that. You know, because there's one thing about 3D printing is that doing basic floors and walls is just, it's boring. It takes a lot of time, you know, to do a whole bunch. So sometimes it's nice to be able to buy a bunch of basic pieces and then be able to add fun things. Because when you're doing the 3D printing, you want to print the cool stuff. You know what I mean? You want to print the really neat stuff. So this is actually a decent system for using with some of the 3D printed stuff that you may already have. And especially with these half walls. And again, there isn't really a good solution out there for a thin wall in the 3D printing world, because you always have to have at least something to, you know, either stand it up properly, or, you know, these little metal clips are really important to the longevity of this piece, because again, those layouts have a lot of flex, And so if you didn't have a metal clip at the bottom here, you can't really 3D print something that thin and have it not break very easily, you know. So these little metal slot things are a really nice solution for, you know, having something. This is so the Warlock Tiles, it will appeal to those people who might want something like this, might want these thin doors and windows. And as a matter of fact, there's a doors and windows expansion pack that has more of these in it. So you know, one might choose to buy one basic set to get a bunch of these, and then buy the doors and windows, and then you have a nice array of things that you can use along with your 3D printed stuff. So let me show you a little bit more about some of the other things that Warlock Tiles are going to be compared with. And one of the obvious ones is a Dwarven Forge. So if we take the pieces that I built, and let me switch back to the other camera. If we take the pieces that I built, you know, the basic set has enough for, you know, 3 decent little layouts. That's using pretty much all the tiles, but like one, you know, I could add that tile into that piece down there, and then I have a 2x3 room over there. I mean, or rather, it's a 6x4 because these are 2-inch tiles, obviously. And I have enough walls to pretty much encompass what you see out here on the layout. And again, that retails for roughly $70. Now, if you wanted to go with something like Dwarven Forge, you can spend about $75, and what you'll kind of end up getting, move that aside for a second, is you can pretty much get, let me bring that a little bit better, sorry. You can pretty much get like a 3-level house. Now these are sort of stackable rooms. I got 3 rooms here of sort of Dwarven Forge. So what you have is there's these sort of 4-inch bases, but of course Dwarven Forge uses what's called wall on the tile system, whereas obviously the Warlock Tiles has the wall, you know, off the tile, which means the wall connects separately off as a separate piece off of the tile. And Dwarven Forge has, for most of its sets, the walls actually on the tile. So you can pull out the wall insert, you have a little opening there, or stuff like that. But what that does mean is that even though this is a 4-inch by 4-inch base, the playable surface within the walls is only about 3 inches. It's a 3x3. So until you take out the walls and you stack multiple pieces together to make a larger layout, you know, you're going to lose a half an inch per wall, essentially. So you just have to sort of plan accordingly. And of course, the other thing is that with these tiles, they're all 4-inch square tiles. So if you're creating a layout, you have to sort of keep that in mind. There's obviously less flexibility. Now, at the same time, this is a higher end product and it's a bit of a showpiece. There's a lot of really fine details in the Dwarven Forge, you know, and it does have these, you know, these nice fancy doors and whatnot, but there's no doubt Dwarven Forge is a high-end product, but it has a little bit less flexibility. So, you know, again, for about the same price, $70 to $75, you get 3 of sort of these 4x4 rooms, but interior-wise are 3x3s. So it's about twice the price. If you wanted to get something that's a little bit more equivalent to that 24 tiles, which is 24 2-inch tiles. So if you think of that as that's 6 tiles by 4 tiles, which is 12 inches by 8 inches, 12 by 8. You know, you're going to need at least 2 sets of this. So the Dwarven Forge comes out to about twice as expensive. Now, Dwarven Forge has some things that the Warlock Tiles does not. Again, it uses full height walls. You can buy roofs, you can buy accessories. There's a lot of stuff that makes Dwarven Forge, you know, stick out on the table. So if I go back to the other camera, I go ahead and I stack my pieces back together. Maybe I bring in my roof. Of course, that's not included in the main. You have to, you know, buy extras. Oh. Sorry, my camera is badly angled. So here you can see, you know, I can build this really nice 3-level house or take a level off, a 2-level house, get different roof styles, have some slate, balcony pieces, etc., etc. So if you're willing to spend a little bit more money, you do have some nice showpieces on the table. But from a playability standpoint, the Warlock Tiles does have a lot more flexibility because you can really shape your rooms, you know, do much more, you know, intricate layouts. You know, Dwarven Forge, the city system is definitely based a lot more on these little sort of squares, these little square buildings. And you can even actually see over my shoulder, I have a couple of the towers in the background, which are on the same sort of 4-inch square bases. So I have a couple stone towers and some buildings. But they're definitely for, I would say they're different use. The Dwarven Forge, you would, if you want to build a village that has like roofs, tops, and trees and stuff like that, and you're building like a really nice sort of set piece, you know, for your table, you know, you're not going to be able to do quite something like that with the Warlock Tiles because everything is an open system. You're not going to be buying roofs, and it's not really intended for that. So in a sense, these are sort of two different play uses that you have for the tile systems. Now, again, though, the nice thing about, so that's sort of the Dwarven Forge. It's a little more expensive, but there's really nice paint jobs. There's a lot of nice detail, and it has a slightly different use in terms of play. Now, if you have like OpenLock or DragonLock, and you're printing, again, you're printing your walls, whether you're printing full height walls or you're printing like half height walls like that, you know, there is something to be said about having your 3D printer, being able to print out exactly the types of pieces that you need, and especially specialty pieces and stuff like that. There is a lot of value and fun, but 3D printing is at a place where not all the printers are fully consumer friendly. There is a lot of tinkering that you have to do to sort of get your prints to start looking really top notch. So it's not really a one and done. It's not really a setup and push go. We're not there on the 3D printing side, and we maybe never be there because, you know, these types of machines have sort of certain imprecisions. But that said, you know, you can print very specific showpiece pieces, statues, and special walls that have, you know, fountains, and, you know, there's lots of so many accessories out there on the internet, that are even free. That there's a lot of people that just build stuff, put it out there for people to download, and for absolutely free. And there's obviously paid service. Printable Scenery has some just amazing houses and goblin camps and orc things, and, you know, they have a whole range of city pieces and wilderness pieces and just all kinds of stuff. Printable Scenery. And similarly, Fat Dragon Games with its DragonLock system also has, you know, dungeon tiles and caverns and stuff like that. So there's a lot out there on the 3D printing side. But, you know, again, it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and you have to paint, obviously. You know, I've only just primed these pieces. I haven't gotten around to painting them yet. It's something that, you know, with COVID and whatnot. So let's try to wrap this up before it gets too long. The Warlock Tile sets, the good is that they're relatively cheap. The build out is very flexible. It comes with a good number of pieces. for what you get for the $70 price range. And again, it retails for $99, $99.99. I don't know why everybody does that $99.99. It's so arbitrary to make it seem like, oh, it's less than $100. But you know, again, the village set has come down from that. The dungeon set is still in the mid 80s. There are accessory packs that are in the $30 to $40 range. Again, there's the extra doors, windows, and walls set. There's some specialty floors, summoning circles, and other stuff. Some have LEDs. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a pretty darn good system for the price. You know, the dungeon stuff is pretty basic, generic stone dungeon. You know, the stone floor, and it does have the wood floors on the opposite side. These same tiles are used both in the dungeon sets and the village set. But the stone walls, you know, they're not going to be. This is a Dwarven forge. They're not going to be as pretty as this, you know. And I actually painted this myself, and it even came out pretty good despite my own not so great skills. Which brings me to, let me talk about the cons, or some of the things that I would prefer. The tiles themselves are, you know, pretty decent looking, but the paint jobs on them they could be better. Now, they obviously, and I'll show you with the tile that they obviously cast the tile in the brown color that, you know, for the wood, in the gray color for the stone. And then what they did is they just applied a black wash so that the wash would sort of seep into the lows. And so you get that sort of, you can see the grain of the wood and the stone with just a simple black wash. And that's fine and good. And they did, you know, obviously the Tudor pieces have a little bit more because they obviously printed it in the brown. They cast the resin in the brown color, but then they did like a dark wash for the grain of the wood, and then they did that sort of yellow stucco, and the yellow stucco, actually the paint job on the yellow stucco is pretty good, is actually pretty nice. So that I don't really have much complaints in it. The one thing that I think bothered me a bit is when you look at the product shots. So the product shots have this really, really nice deep wood tone. And even the stucco looks right. Now granted, the wattle and daub stucco, it looks fine on this. But you know, the paint job for the rest of the plastic it's not bad. It's not like it's terrible, but it's very plasticky. The paint job in the pictures, and this may be a computer render too, you know, it's hard to tell from looking at it, but this tile, and especially the detail that you can see on the floor tiles, is really nice in the pictures. And this is not quite the product that they're representing. Now, I know product images are always a bit nicer than the products themselves. You know, Big Mac does not look like what it does on the commercial. So there's a certain amount of give and take, but I really think that this is clearly not the same color. It's not even that this is a nicer paint job. It is a much, much darker brown. So it's a minor foible. Maybe it's just me personally, but if it looked as nice, if these looked as nice as those product images do, boy, I would be like, these are fantastic. Now, I do like these. I don't want to, you know, I'm not trying to poo-poo the job that they did, because these are nice tiles. This is a nice system. But boy, if you really look at the detail that they did, you know, the floors have this are really nicely, like there's, you know, clearly they did some dry brushing, and you know, you have the dark recesses of the tiles, and then you do definitely have a highlight. So that means if you really want your tiles to look nice, you're going to have to do a little bit of your own dry brushing, painting, you know, which the whole point of buying these is that so I don't have to do more painting. So that's a minor foible. Again, people complain a bit about the amount of force that it requires to get the clips in. It takes a little bit of practice to get it, and yeah, you can split your tile if you're not careful. So just, but it's not broken. Again, my particular tile split on the joins, you know, split perfectly on the glue spots. So I can glue this back together. It's good as new. I think it's a fairly minor complaint, but these are very, very tight. The one thing about the OpenLock system is that it does lock together somewhat loosely. So it's like if you had a big build and you dropped it, yeah, that thing's going to pop apart pretty easily. And you know, it's hard to say whether the Warlock tile, whether a build like I put together, if I dropped it from a significant height. I mean, I guess I could try it, but maybe I'll do that as a secondary video. But the point being is that I don't know if they're going to adjust. I heard somewhere that they might adjust their locks a little bit to be slide in a little bit easier. I mean, it's a minor complaint. It's a minor complaint, but it is, you do have to exert a fair amount of force, and that can be challenging, especially if you have any issues with your hand strength or whatnot. So again, paint job is a minor complaint. The clips are a very minor complaint. I think the value for the dollar is pretty darn good. Oh, there's one other thing that I wanted to, before I kind of close out everything. There's one other interesting thing about these that I haven't seen anybody talk about yet. But all the tiles, whether they're walls or whatnot, all the tiles have, if you look very closely, they have just like about a 1 millimeter cutout at the bottom, where just above where the floor joins. Now, I haven't seen anybody who said anything about this. Now, I haven't watched all the videos that people talk about, but I haven't seen anybody who said anything about the cutouts. And I have a theory. It may be a dumb one. I'm probably wrong. But let's take that 4x4 I built. Clearly, it was a design choice. This was not a mistake. All of the tiles have this notch cut from them just above the floor. And I have a theory. Now, clearly they have expansion ideas in mind. And so that notch gives me a couple ideas. They are thinking about verticality. So maybe they're thinking about floors that you can slide stuff into. And as an example, they did actually they're putting out the Yawning Portal next year. And it's a big build with a bunch of tiles. It's very expensive, unfortunately. It's overpriced in my opinion. I mean, I haven't seen it. I'd love if they sent me one to look at and see what the value is. But anyways, I noticed the thing on the Yawning Portal is it has these cardboard floors in between. And these things have those little notches, which says to me that maybe they're intending things to slot in. And one of the things I did notice is that if you do have a design like this and you want a special floor, well, if you take your old dungeon tiles that you might have, or the ones that are currently in print, they actually slot really nicely into the floors because there is that little bit of space there. Now, they would probably slot nicely even if there wasn't that space. But it does make me think about what can you use that slot for. And, you know, so obviously you could put a special floor in that looks, now you can't open the door obviously anymore with that particular piece in the set. Like you can open the doors, obviously. And if you put in some sort of insert or put in something like that, you wouldn't be able to do that anymore. But maybe that's not what's relevant. The thing is that it definitely suggests that something is going to go into the walls or be possibly held by the walls with a given layout. They clearly designed these notches on purpose. So there's going to be some sort of expandability at some point, I'm assuming, that takes advantage of the little notches in the floor. It's hard to say what it might be, but it's just an intriguing little mystery that I've thought of. But again, there is some nice, if you do have the dungeon tiles and you have some special floors, and you want to just throw that baby in there, boom. Now you've got a puzzle floor or whatever, or a fireball, which is on the other side. Boom, fireball. Now your house is on fire. Anyways, so getting back to that, I am curious to know how they're planning to utilize that slot for a build. And it does seem like something would slide in, like if you had a build that was open on the one side, you took off the walls on the one side, you could slide a piece of cardboard, something printed or whatever. I am very curious about that. Yeah, so I guess last but not least, pretty much covered everything. Yeah, again, the these OpenLock clips, if you have 3D printed stuff, it just slots right in with your other floors. Oh, the one thing you do have to note, I guess, that because it takes a lot of pressure to push these in, you have to be a little bit more gentle with your printed tiles, because you have this nice printed tile and then boom shakalaka, you screw up trying to slot it in, and you've cracked your tile, because the 3D printed tiles are not as durable, and the Warlock tile will win in a battle. Just so you know. So just be aware. It's not a big deal. Just when you're putting your OpenLock in, just be a little gentle with the force that you use. But again, that's not a big deal, because the OpenLock clips are a little bit more forgiving than the Warlock tile clips. I think that pretty much does it for everything I wanted to talk about. They're a good value. I mean, there's this. I love dungeon tile systems. I have a lot of Dwarven Forge. I spent way too much money on Dwarven Forge. I've got the 3D printer that I've printed a bunch of stuff up. Like I said, I was working on, before this even came out earlier this year, at the end of earlier this year. I was working on my own, printing these floors, printing up walls and stuff like that, trying to create some verticality, whatnot like that. And these came out, and I'm like, oh, now I've got to buy those. So I don't necessarily need to buy the dungeon. I've got lots of dungeon tiles. I've got lots of cave tiles. I am curious to see if they do a cave system. Cave systems are a little bit more difficult, just because there's a lot, it's not as square, obviously. And that is actually one thing that I do want to get back to. Dwarven Forge has been around so long that their dungeon tiles, they have a lot more non-linear, non-square sort of things that you can add to your layout. So there is that, and same with the 3D printing. Currently, WizKid's offerings, they're all square stuff, square tiles, square walls. Pretty much, there's not a lot of different geometry than squares. That'll probably change over time, but again, product demand for something like that. That's the perfect thing that I think 3D printers can fill in your repertoire for that, because a 3D printer, you can print that one specialty thing that you want to print that may have a weird shape or whatever, and that's not something that somebody has to mass produce and try to market. I wish there were more than 8 clips. That is for me, that's a bit of a con. For other people, they probably won't care. I wish there were more than 8 clips, or I wish they would at least put the file out on the internet to say, you can use this under license. Go ahead and print out your own OpenLock clips or DragonLock, as it were. Haven't printed out any Fat Dragon stuff. I do own some of their stuff, but I haven't printed. Anyway, I've gone on way too long, but I hope this video was worthwhile in showing you what you can do with a Warlock Tiles. So, Owlbear approved. It's not really a thing, but it's worth it. This is a good value for your dollar. If you don't have other dungeon systems too, their dungeon tile system is a pretty good value as well. So keep on printing, buy Warlock Tiles, do whatever, and I hope you enjoy your day. Please like and subscribe. Follow me. I'm on Twitter. I'm right here on the YouTubes. Like me, subscribe me. I hope this was helpful to you. And I will see you on the other side.